Hey everyone, I'm your host Rae Irelan, and you are listening to the Soul Aligned podcast, where we help high achieving leaders and driven visionaries do what you love and live your purpose. Welcome to episode 9. We're going to be talking about how to channel your inner goddess. So excited about this episode. Yes. Channeling the inner goddess is the very beginning of my personal journey, my personal story into stepping into personal development, into becoming a coach, into building my business. It was like the core foundation of so much of my work. So I'm excited to kind of rewind and go back into my roots and share with you all from that space. The first thing that I kind of was interested in terms of personal development, even though I didn't know it was that at the time, was that my aunt would come into town and she'd come hang out with my mom and I and my sister. We'd have our girl time, and my aunt would bring these special cards, and in the cards we'd pull them and they would share with us what goddess we could learn from for that day, and we would talk about how she related to our life, and it was just a really, really special moment. So I grew up doing this from I was probably 7 the first time I did it, right? And I always looked forward to having Aunt Mel in town to play with her cards. And so, of course, from a young age, that kind of opened me up into thinking about how I could develop myself and understanding and learning about the different goddesses from all these different cultures, from all these different countries around the world, and just to learn about what their stories were. And really, what was the power that they were holding on to that we could also cultivate and utilize in our own lives. So super grateful for that beginning of my journey, kind of laying out these stones to walk on throughout my life. And as I got older, I noticed, how much I really started to use the goddess energy in my life. And a lot of times this was in my performing. So I want to share this with you all because, not everyone is wanting to become a coach that's on here. Maybe you are, that's awesome too. But maybe you have another job. This information, you can utilize it in your job, in your relationships, to just start to kind of add this new sense of play. And so I began to really use goddesses and goddess archetypes to channel my personal power while I was performing. This was really fun to be able to feel into okay, if I'm a goddess that's standing on stage singing a song, what is that story that I'm sharing with my audience, similar to the stories of the goddesses that I read about from a young age. So as I went into this, I started to understand and learn about the different parts of myself, because when you first maybe think about goddesses, you might think of your college toga parties where you're wrapped in gold and white, and isn't that what a goddess is? Yes and no. There's so many different levels and layers and facets to goddesses that you actually have a full range, just like you have a full range of humans living on this planet. And so I started to learn about these different goddesses and the energies that they held. They weren't all just angelic and came down to look beautiful and kind of drink wine and be served grapes. Actually, there were a lot of goddesses that had different strengths and qualities that really helped them not only survive, but thrive in their worlds. So enter in Kali. She was the beginning of understanding and learning the true power behind goddess energy, and that it doesn't all look like fairies and rainbows and butterflies, but actually can be quite destructive, almost as destructive as a hurricane or a wildfire. And I started to connect to a different idea and presence of what power can be. And as I did this, I started to accept all the different parts of myself, because I think there was just still this desire to just be beautiful and smart and successful. And I didn't really want to deal with any of the other stuff. maybe you can relate to me on that. It's like, why can't everything just be easy and beautiful? Well, it's life, it's human life. And the cool part is that you can develop a beautiful relationship with some of these other parts of yourself that might be more destructive or fierce or aggressive even. But the question comes down to, how are you using those qualities to not only better your own life, but better the life of those around you? So when Kali entered my life, it felt like everything was falling apart. I felt like my job was falling apart. I was teaching more at the time. I felt like even my relationships were definitely falling apart. Like my long-term boyfriend was no longer a part of my life in that way. We were still trying to create a relationship, but we had no idea how to do that without the romance and intimacy there. I was also parts of these old habits of mine were falling off. I was no longer okay with everything. I kind of started to become a little bit more picky, and I realized, wait, I have some preferences here, and I don't want my life to just be totally average. And I'm kind of getting angry that I've been in this system, of education, of society, that kind of directs you in this way to be okay with having an average life. And I started to get pissed. Guys, you might feel my fire in these episodes, but it is not even close to the fire that I was experiencing during this time of my life. I literally felt like there was a flame shooting up me at all times, because as I looked around in my life, every day I woke up, I realized that this was not where I wanted to be. And who the heck decided that I would be here? And guess what? As I was looking and going like this to everyone else, I'm like, who did this to me? Of course, look at all these other fingers that were pointing back to myself. It's a lot harder to blame yourself. It's a lot easier to put others in front of you and say, you did this to me. And so even in that realization, here comes a whole new wave of anger and fire and resentment towards myself. And I remember one of my first mentors, I'm crying to her, I'm explaining this position that I'm in, and she goes, sounds like Kali's on your team. And I love that, because it wasn't about Kali being against me. She wasn't trying to destroy my life to make me completely miserable, but she was actually opening me up to something new, something that is possible beyond what I know and beyond my current reality. And just like those wildfires, everything gets scorched, right? There's nothing that can really survive, nothing that can be left. And what is left? Fertile soil for new seeds to be planted and actually grow in abundance. And that's exactly what was happening to me in that moment. And so I began to understand, okay, how can I actually get Kali more on my team? If we're doing this, what else can we destroy along the way, And it became more of a playful game. Of course, I was able to step in with more compassion as well, because I had this greater perspective, almost this third-person perspective of, hey, I'm doing this to create more fertile soil for my truer, more aligned dreams to be planted. Not seen right away, but to be planted. And as I did that, it was just this deepening of acceptance. And a lot of times you can hear about this as the dark night of your soul, right? The goddesses can help you through whatever phase you're in, because the beautiful part is after getting out of that phase with Kali, new goddesses showed up. They arrived into my life to show me how I could be more supported stepping forward from there. A lot of times we get so caught up in trying to do everything on our own, right? We're trying to find our job by ourselves. We're trying to find our love by ourselves. And then, we're trying to feed ourselves. All of these things we're taught, take care of yourself. And what if there's actually a possibility that we have others that can help us? And maybe they're not all visible others, but actually invisible, like these goddess archetypes. So that's what I started to do. And it was so amazing to open up to receiving help from the different goddesses during different times in my life. So, for instance, say there was another time where I was needing to tap more into my pleasure, my sensuality. I felt like disconnected from me being a sexual, sensual being. I was resentful of men and I wanted to clear up this energy. I called in the goddess Aphrodite and I asked her, like, what would it be like if you were on my team? What if it would be like if I could actually invoke part of your story, your essence, and bring that into my life? And it can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're working with a new goddess. That's an amazing first page of the book. But guess what? You have to get through the middle part of the book to get to the end where there's like that resolution. So it can be a game if you so choose it to be. And each goddess has her own story, like I shared. So each goddess can talk about where she came from. She shares what happened to her during her lifetime. She shares who was she? Who did she show up as in those experiences? And who was she relating to? What were her relationships like? Each goddess has these different skills and talents, some that are natural and some that were developed through her story. So you get to understand and see this whole other timeline and figure out how you can bring parts of that timeline into your own life so you can grow and experience some of those lessons, see them in your own life, and not have to do it alone, but actually use those resources, those tools that she may have had or developed, and say, I like how she got through that. What would happen if I try and do that in my own life? And it's so amazing because the goddess archetypes can remind us of some of our superpowers, both the natural ones and the ones that have been developed. So we remember, like, oh wait, I actually had that tool, I just haven't been using it. And that's when we can really start to see changes happen in our outside life. We might not have accepted some of these tools. Like for a holy goddess Aphrodite, I had not accepted that I was a sexual, sensual, sexy goddess human being. I was totally awkward. I was just like, I feel like sometimes I can be sexy around like one or two people, but really throughout the day, if I'm walking outside, like that wouldn't be the term that I would use to describe myself. Like maybe awkward or cute. We could go with cute. And so it felt weird, but as we work with the goddesses, we can actually learn more about their story and start to develop what they have given us and what they have left. And so I found goddesses to help me in my personal development, relationships, and then eventually I started to see how they could help me in my business, which was really cool. Each goddess, she has her own unique quality. So what would it be like if I was to diversify the qualities of essence that I hold within my own body? So I started to play around with this by inviting the goddesses into my body. And I kind of already shared this a few times, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper. So for instance, when Kali was with me, I was having a lot of difficulties in speaking my truth. I had a hard time saying what I wanted or what I didn't want, especially when it came to my intimate relationships. So what I did was I actually invited Kali into my tongue, right? A specific space where I knew if I had Kali's tongue, she wouldn't let me just keep my mouth shut during times when I actually needed to speak up and say no. She would speak immediately. So I was able to step out of my own way of self-sabotage, of keeping my mouth closed or, not speaking up, and just allow her to take over, kind of give up the reins. Another instance, like Kuan Yin, I was dealing with some forgiveness in my life. I think we all have had times where it's really difficult to forgive someone or something that's happened. And I just felt my heart hardening every single day more and more. And so when it came to this point, I was like, you know what? I need to let this go. Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion and forgiveness. Please open my heart. Allow me to bring forgiveness into my heart. Come into my heart. Like, don't come into my tongue, right? I don't need you there. I need you here in this present space. So the magic that happened, right? It's that ability to surrender and accept. Again, Aphrodite, it was like, Aphrodite, come help me out. Like, get into my sacral chakra. Let me feel that sensual, creative energy. And I immediately put that into my performing. And guess what? It was magnetizing to the audience. They're like, what is going on there? It's so much fun to be able to play in this way because there's so many tools that you already have available. You just haven't like turned the light on in those different rooms. So you can look in the different chakra centers, the energy centers within your body, or you can go directly to the goddess and see which energy centers are part of the body do they relate to, and then bring them into your own body. So each day you have the ability to invoke a different goddess. During meditation, you can invite them in, and you can invite them in throughout all these parts of your day, whether you're cooking, whether you're walking from the couch to the bathroom, right? What does it feel like to walk in the presence of that goddess? What does it feel like to speak? A lot of times, women have a hard time really using their voice in a powerful way. The goddesses, we can bring them into our voice in different ways. So sometimes we can feel uncomfortable. Maybe the edge is you feel uncomfortable being super intense and direct. Maybe the edge is that you actually feel uncomfortable being soft, vulnerable, and submissive. You can call in these goddesses to help you move forward with whatever challenge you're dealing with. So, of course, you first have to identify the challenge, and then you can kind of become your own goddess doctor in figuring out what goddess can I turn to, because I need support here, and I don't want to do it on my own. So, beyond that, you can play around with the goddesses and the archetypes to inspire how you dress, how you set up your environments or the spaces that you're in, how you relate to your loved ones or strangers, how you also design your business. One thing I've loved playing around with are the different colors that goddesses are associated with. You'll find each one has her own like color palette. It's almost like she branded herself in the ancient times. So as we're stepping into invoking and using the goddess energy, you're becoming a modern day goddess. What are your brand colors? What energies do you want people to feel immediately when they see you? So again, you can bring that into how you're dressed, but you can also bring it into the design of your business, literally directly into your branding, to understand what are the vibes and energy that I want my audience and potential clients to see. Who am I wanting to attract from that space? There's so much that can be done with the goddess archetypes. Of course, I'm so excited about it because they've been such a huge part of my journey, and also many successful women that I've seen just take off. And men go for it too, there's no stopping for who is able to tap in and utilize the power of the goddess. And I think to just close, we can just be so grateful for these goddesses and those that came before us to share these stories, to carve out a path that we can follow down that can connect us to virtues and values and principles, tools, and strategies to be the most fully embodied version of ourselves during our lifetime. So that's what I hope you get to leave with today. I hope you play around with goddess archetypes and have so much fun doing that, because they're probably already on your team and helping you out anyways. So just identify them and really get the juice out of what is possible. So thank you all so much for checking out this video. Subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't yet. And if you want to check out more videos, tap the screen right there. Thank you so much. I'm Rae Irelan. See you soon.